Hello, this is Alex Calvo Garcia. You're listening to the Iron Hour podcast.
Listeners, welcome. Barra here, and you are listening to episode 41 of season 4 of the Iron Hour podcast, brought to you in association with TalkSport Fan Network and available on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, Apple Podcasts, and much more. We are proudly sponsored by No Film, Best Blanks Wholesale, Hole in the Wand, and AC Videography and Photography. And do you know what? I'm going to make an executive decision. Let's say the Georgian in Barton are now our full-time sponsors, because I was sent a deluge of pictures of their signs on the toilet doors of the artists saying that they're not only proud sponsors of Scunthorpe United, but also of the Iron Hour podcast too. So, motion carried, not just sponsoring the FPL, but now sponsoring the main podcast too. Proud to say the Georgian in Barton are now on board. Well, it's been news galore this week. Howe shipped out, Aidan Dausch shipped in, Mahadey extended, the ref takes a good look at the pitch, Tom Hopper takes a tumble, and Cal Roberts scores goals on his century. We discuss, dissect and unpack the full events of this week and much more. Coming up on this week's episode, we have a mix up of the episode slightly with an extended section of fans' questions. So this week's episode, you can expect a full rundown of the victory over Southend on Saturday. A classic it may not have been, but once again, Andy Butler finds ways to win games of football. We have our Spy in the Camp segment with Lee of the Brunton Bugle, a Carlisle United podcast. An extended fans' question segment, as we mentioned earlier. Our scoreline predictions in association with the Unity Group, an FPL update as sponsored by the Georgian in Barton. And at the end, once again, we'll have a little talk about Evie and that race night. So joining me this week is a man who is yet to come out and back the current Prime Minister, hedging his bets possibly. Let's hope he is far more outspoken on the football, published author of Scunthorpe United 20 Legends, and a man who once scored a 20-yard thunder strike wearing winkle pickers during a Year 11 versus Year 10 football match at lunchtime in school uniform, only to storm off literally and take the ball home when somebody stole his glasses. I was there, I was a witness. It's Max Bell on the Iron Hour podcast.
I just want to make it clear that as a very, very average goalkeeper, I've never scored from 20 yards in my life.
But you don't deny the rest of the story.
I feel like denying that bit gives me the most plausible defence. And all I'll say about the politics is, you know, can Keir Starmer do it on a cold Tuesday night in Carlisle? If he can, he's got my full support.
Well said. Well, the availability of my regular panelists wasn't as forthcoming this week, but I have managed to procure the services of another published author, fresh from his article published exclusively in the internationally renowned football magazine 442. He may have less international caps than any Aluko, but he's the only pundit we could afford. Iron Hour writer, Ollie Woolley, on this week's episode of the Iron Hour podcast. Thanks for joining us, Ollie.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. Evening, everyone.
Evening, morning, good day, whenever you're listening to this. Thank you for joining us. Right, Max, let's get straight into it. Aidan Dausch said it best. One word, bounce back ability. Or is it 2 words, or is it 3? Anyway, what do you reckon?
I mean, that is the Aidan Dausch quote. I will give you that. Well, you said that Andy Butler finds ways to win football matches, so I think therefore the sort of almost purposeful solution of awful pre-match pitch, and which, as you hinted at, I think got quite a lot of scrutiny from the referee before the game. Actually, you know, a goalkeeping and defensive mix-up from Southend, moment of quality from Cal Roberts when we need him most. Some excellent defending throughout the game. I have to say, I thought Evans and Horton and Mahadey were terrific. You know, for the near 100 minutes that we required them, and then what actually I thought was a pretty decent refereeing performance. Had a look at a couple of penalty appeals and decided that he wasn't interested. So that 3 points will be just as valuable as any, no matter how well we play or no matter how well we don't play.
Shades of 2-0 against Grimsby. The mix-up with the defender and the keeper.
I mean that Grimsby one will be impossible to top because I think 3 of them ended up on the floor. A furious Rob Jones then ended up following shortly behind them and clearly wondering what cretins he was playing with. And Hayes scored immediately. Although I would give a big shout out to Tyler Denton. When the ball's broken to him and there's the shouts of shoot from the Donny Road end, he quite rightly ignored those, but then also played an absolutely terrific, 35, 40-yard crossfield ball, which found Roberts absolutely perfectly, and he does what he does best and cut inside despite the defenders stopping him, and won us the game.
Right, Ollie, let's cast our minds back to Friday afternoon. And, well, Friday had been full of rumours of Dec Howe going out on loan, and it was confirmed by the club on Friday. So Dec Howe out, Aidan Dausch in, as confirmed on Saturday. Bit of a surprise for you, or did you think Dec Howe was going to make his way out of the Attis?
No, it was a surprise. Obviously, he's one of our top scorers this season. I think he's third, something like that. To be fair, we've never fully played to his strengths, I'd say. He's always struck me as better in the front two, probably with Whitehall. He's kind of played off the left, which probably isn't his natural position. But hopefully he can get some game time at Altrincham. I think Dausch looked good on Saturday. He looked quick, quite skillful. Thought as well, for a young lad, he used his body quite well. Quite good at sort of backing in, letting defenders know he was there, which you don't always see in the younger lads.
Right, Ollie, I'm going to ask you a question. So Max talked about the referee having a good look at 2 penalty appeals. Now, going to get so much stick for saying this. Does Tom Hopper fall over the mud? Does he fall over a molehill? What's going on there? Because I know there's contact, but it looks like the pitch has some involvement for me.
Yeah, it was tough. I think that the first pictures we saw before any video definitely made it look like that. Again, the video does also look a bit like that. I think it was a tough one, really. I think it's one of those, if it was given against you, you probably wouldn't be very happy. But at the same time, if I'm a Southend fan, I'm fuming. I'd think the Evans one, though, even if it was a foul, that was out the area for me. So that was kind of a non-point as such for me. But the Hopper one, bit controversial.
Max, I could see you were
I don't know about that. So I think Ollie's right about the second one in terms of the Evans. What if you watch it back on Gareth's vlog on Iron Army HD for anyone on YouTube, the commentary in the back is quite good. I think you can hear what I'm pretty sure is Joe Richards, big friend of the pod, going, "Get your hands off him! What are you doing?" As soon as Evans does go like that, some referees you would give it. Obviously, the Southend manager was in the press afterwards, particularly the Southend Echo, sort of having a real pop with the referee. But even he said, "Well, I wasn't sure if the second one was outside the area." It's a foul in my opinion, but it is outside the area. So I suppose the referee could have given the free kick and annoyed everybody. In terms of the first one, look, I think on balance it's a foul. I think if you're Southend, you're probably a little bit unlucky not to get it. I don't think it's stone wall. I agree with you. I don't think the pitch has helped. I don't think Tom Hopper's a diver. I don't see what incentive he has to go down looking for contact there. He's rounded the keeper. He's 2 yards out. He's going to score. His touch isn't brilliant though. And if you went on Southend Twitter at the time, particularly in the sort of the replies on the Southend Echo live feed, Hopper is not desperately well liked by a lot of the Blues support, and there was a little bit of criticism for his first touch. But I do nonetheless have a bit of sympathy with him. It's exactly the kind of decision you don't get when you've travelled 4 hours away from home. We've been there. If it had been the other way around, I think we'd have all been screaming for it. But that's the way that football is sometimes. Unfortunately, we've certainly been on the other end of it. Those kind of marginal decisions when you're thinking good sides win games despite the referee. So, yeah, that was one of them. And one of those 50-50 decisions fell our way for at least for this time anyway. We'll see how it goes when we're the side going away to Carlisle on, well, tomorrow or today as they might be listening to this.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about the pitch. I mean, we could spend another 5-10 minutes this week talking about the pitch as we unfortunately seem to every week at the moment. But I'll just finish for the pitch on this with that. Even Cal Roberts said in his post-match interview on BBC Radio Humberside that you're probably not going to see a lot of good football on the pitch this season, which that line stood out to me and was very...
It is a good line, although very, very quickly. I actually thought Southend did play pretty good football on that pitch. I thought they moved the ball pretty quickly. They got it wide and they had some good movements and good pattern. They kept it simple, don't try and overcomplicate it. So it goes to show that you can play reasonable football, but you can see why Southend have maybe just lacked a little bit of quality in the final third at times this season.
Yeah, I can go with that. Right, Ollie, Will Evans, stoic, man mountain. Talk about that performance on Saturday.
I think it's one of those performances that he seems to put in every time we need it. If he didn't do it kind of every time he plays, we probably talk about it more, but every time he plays, he seems to be an absolute colossus for us. He wins everything. He's first to everything when he needs to be. Since joining, he's just been exceptional. I think he's one who, come the end of the season, I'd really love to see us re-sign. I think, depending what happens with Boise, obviously I know you love him, I could really see him being a captain of the club. He's got those leadership qualities, and just personally, I always prefer kind of a big bruising centre back as a captain over someone like Roberts, who has stepped into the role. He's unbeaten in it, as I think he said. But just personal preference, I love seeing someone like Andy Crosby as a captain. It's just something I'm more used to.
Yeah, I can see that. Right, Max, another player then let's pick out. You probably know I'm going to go with this one. It's Rory Mahadey. He has been phenomenal, really, since he came into Scunthorpe. But the performance on Saturday, not a 10 out of 10, but everything he needed to do, he did.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I thought particularly, given that Southend did put us under pressure, they did put balls into the box. Sometimes when... say the centre halves in front of him, particularly Evans and Boyce, have looked a little bit more vulnerable. His pace on the turn, that's not what Southend brings to the party. So dealt with the cross as well. I'm particularly impressed with the free kick right at the end. When that ball's hung up in the air, it would have been very easy and not totally unreasonable for a goalkeeper to go, total risk minimisation, don't go near it. But the fact he absolutely went, no, this is my ball, I'm having this. That was really good goalkeeping. And I thought he was the best goalkeeper on the pitch. I certainly wouldn't have swapped him with the Southend stopper. And that's a massive testament to Will. We forget he's still only 19. And, when you're playing in anybody's academy, it is very, very different than when you're having to deal with crosses into the box and a side like Southend have got 3 or 4 lads steaming in the back post, top drawer. If he plays like that, and if the centre halves in front of him play as well as they did as a 3, ignoring the fact that we had issues throughout the game further forward, if those 3 play like that away at Carlisle, we'll get something out of that game.
Okay, let's move on then to our Spy in the Camp segment. So here you go, this week's Spy in the Camp. I am joined on this episode of the Iron Hour by Lee from the Brunton Bugle, a Carlisle United podcast. Thanks for joining us, Lee. How strict are you getting on?
Yeah, not too bad. It's football-wise, a very strange old season. We're back down in non-league football for the first time in a while. I'm relatively satisfied, but I think our fan base is a little bit divided on how things are, and we've had little spells of good form, little spells of bad form, and it's a kind of hard one to work out, really.
Well, you touched on it there, and this season marks your first in non-league in 21 years, having been relegated last season, finishing second from bottom with 42 points after 20 years in the EFL. Obviously, last season, the only team to have done worse than you was Morecambe, who themselves were in free fall. What kind of changes were made in the close season to rectify the on-field issues?
Yeah, to explain the on-field issues, I'll have to give you a bit of sort of wider context. So you probably remember a few years ago we got promoted up to League One under Paul Simpson, who did an incredible job with what was a bottom three budget basically to get us promoted via the playoffs. And we still had a similar budget in League One, and as a result, he really struggled to put together a team that was anywhere near capable of challenging up, even to stay up really. In the background, a takeover for the club was happening, which was a huge moment for us because for years we'd been owned by three local businessmen who are, proper Carlisle United fans, but they don't have bundles of cash. I mean, Andrew Jenkins, God rest his soul, he's passed away a year or two ago. He was the one who would put some money in when he could. But they just didn't have that. They were all like, in the nicest way possible, like 70s, 80s, grey haired white men who just were very much stuck in their ways, and there wasn't that oomph to push us forward. In the background, a takeover happened, and it was completed in November 2023 by a family called the Piatics from Jacksonville in Florida. Honestly, really lovely people, really enthusiastic, really have bought into it. Basically, they as a family of the two parents and their two kids and their partners, and they come over sort of in twos and are here at the club doing stuff when they need to. And they've probably put the best part of, I reckon, at least 12 million probably into the club in terms of investing in infrastructure. The playing squad needed a massive overhaul anyway, but they've when you come up on Tuesday night, you'll see like there's a huge fan zone now in the main stand car park, which is fantastic. There's a massive big screen in there showing the live games that are on early and when it's a Saturday kickoff. There's boxes now in the east stand that used to be just windows at the back there. It's all fit out. The whole east stand's been fit out. Lounges. It is incredible the amount they've put into it. They stuck with some a bit too long, probably. They then gave Mike Williamson the job last season after the window had shut with a squad that Simo had built to play very direct. And Mike Williamson, I don't know if you had any experience of coming across his sides, possibly with Gateshead, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, possibly, yeah.
He is one of these modern philosophy managers who wants to pass it out across the back, keep the ball, that kind of thing, and grind teams down like that. And we didn't have a squad built for that in the slightest. And rather than just work with what he had for now and then wait till the summer or January to rebuild, he basically from the off was like, we're going to play this way and we're going to stick to it. And he wouldn't budge from it. And we had players playing in completely out of position. We were awful. And then when it came to January, the club sort of decided rather than tell Williamson, look, you need to just deal with what you got here and, adapt to what you did. They said, well, we're going to fully back you here. And we made 12 signings in the January window. Or was it 11? I think it was 11. We made a 12th one after the window was shut when he got sacked. And it made very little difference. We got battered by Swindon on the last day of the window, basically, I think, or near enough. And at that point, it was just like, no, this can't go on. So they got rid of him. Mark Hughes comes in. He had to deal with what he had. It was too late to keep us up. And in the summer, the problem is we're stuck with a lot of players on long contracts. and as much fans are like, oh, we need to get rid of these players. Like, we need to pay them up. I was like, some of them are 2 or 3 year deals on, 2 or 3 grand a week. As much as they've put a lot of money into it, they're not stupid. They're not just going to, throw money on a bonfire effectively. So we were stuck with sort of a mishmash of a squad. We managed to get a few out. We've made a few changes here and there. There's a lot out on contract this summer actually, and that's when I think big changes potentially can happen. But basically, Hughes has had to kind of adapt. Based around what was sort of available really. And we've made 1 or 2 good. Look, Regan Linney was a no-brainer as a signing. This level scores goals for fun. Some of the rest of them, it's been a hodgepodge really in terms of who's been actually any good. 1 or 2 of them have already left and all gone out on loan and stuff. So it's a strange one. I think we're pretty coming to it later. I think we're round about where we probably should be in the table based on all that. But yeah, a few changes were made off the field as well, in terms of the head of football operations and stuff like that. Mark Tierney came in, he used to be on loan for us years ago. He replaced a guy called Rob Clarkson, who we'd brought in, who was, in the nicest way, a bit of a wet wipe and not someone who would, stand up to a manager. And that's what you need really from someone in that position. And yeah, it kind of feels like we're in a season of transition, but a lot of fans really don't want to accept that. We've had 2 years of dross. We were awful in League One. We were terrible in League Two, and then picked up in the remaining 10 or so games. And Hughes managed to find a way to get this squad to actually work. But yeah, I think people sort of thought we were just going to come in and hit the ground running and, walk over all these teams. And I think kind of underappreciated how good actually some of the top teams are at this level.
Sure. Now, you talked in length there about Mark Hughes, Sparky's time in charge of Carlisle. But of course, in recent weeks, he's been linked, along with every other manager, it seems, with the job at Blackburn. If his time at Carlisle was to come to an end, although, of course, he has played down those rumours saying he hasn't had any contact, but if his time at Carlisle was to come to an end, how would you kind of rate how it's gone for him over the past year and a little bit? And would you be worried about him leaving?
I'd say the year he's had has been solid. Not spectacular, but solid. I think last season he was handed a proper hospital pass. I know a lot of our fans, there's a good section of our fans think he should have kept us up with the squad he had. And I was kind of like, they were demoralised. They were awful. The performances they're putting in, it took him a few weeks to get in any sort of good shape. And excuse me, I think he only lost one game at home after he took over last season, which was a big improvement on, I think I'm trying to think under Williamson, we lost dozens. And yet, with what he's had available, I think he's done as good as he can. He's not exactly the most expansive manager. I think he's a manager who adapts to what he has, to be fair. I think he's quite smart with that. He doesn't necessarily just go in and say, this is my philosophy like a Williamson does. I think he very much looks and goes, well, what can I do with this squad? And works around that. But, I mean, yes, he hasn't set the world on fire. And I think he initially won over the fan base in a relegation battle, but now we're expected to be up at the top. I don't think it's necessarily winning people over with us being at times conservative in the way we play, which I don't think is necessarily the worst thing in the world to do. I think we probably could be more expansive, but it's a weird one. If he was to leave tomorrow, I wouldn't be devastated, but I wouldn't be like over the moon, jumping around, cheering, going, yes, we've got him out. I'd be like, okay, I'm now sort of worried about who we're actually going to bring in now. We're going to actually take some time to think about this. I mean, if he was to go tomorrow, I would want probably someone in just to fill the role to the end of the season. Basically, someone who probably knows the club fairly well. I mean, the irony is the one person everyone would suggest there would be Paul Simpson, but I think third time lucky might be pushing it a little bit much with him. But yeah, I think I'd be amazed if he was our manager next season, whatever happens. If we go through the playoffs or where we don't go, I think he probably will say, yeah, I'm done. He's only on a rolling contract. He hasn't got like a long-term contract. It's a 1-year rolling contract, so it'll get reviewed in the summer anyway. And I think he might go, yeah, I'm done.
Wow, to be honest, I think a lot of fans will be low-key surprised with that. But let's talk about the backdrop to this game. So, it's third versus fourth. Now, traditionally, that would sound like a top of the table clash, but unfortunately, both the Iron and Carlisle find themselves already behind the 8 ball, really, with this title race. Arguably, Carlisle more so than us, having played 2 more games and coming into this off the back of that 1-0 defeat away to league leaders Rochdale, who already now have an 11-point lead on the both of us. Now, before we look back on Saturday's game, let's look back to the start of the season, because I myself was speaking to a few Cumbrians and they were telling me that they was fully expecting a title push, this campaign. And I don't know if it was a little bit overzealous, a little bit overambitious, but the sentiments I was getting was anything less than winning the title is probably a little bit of a failure. So do you think they were maybe getting a bit carried away? Would you have shared those sentiments before a ball was kicked?
Absolutely, they were getting carried away. I really do think that. I think, look, on our podcast, we did our predictions, and I'm fairly sure someone will probably correct me on this. I think I predicted us to go through the playoffs, and we're ridiculous optimists on our podcast. We're always going to say that, but we were always wary of the fact that I mean York last season were fantastic, and look, they bottled it in the playoffs. We all know that, but when you looked at what they did in the summer, they didn't lose anyone of any quality, and they strengthened, and they really strengthened. So you're kind of like, come on, they're going to be right up there again. You'd imagine, even with changing the manager early on. So I always thought they were going to be right up there. And the truth is, we're coming off the back of 2 terrible seasons. And you don't just suddenly become a great team overnight as a result. Even with like signing a player like of Linney's quality, there were still gaps in the squad. You could see that we still couldn't quite get a few of the players out we wanted to get out. And I always thought, you know what? I mean, right now the bare minimum for us is to try and finish third and make sure we get only one playoff game basically before the final. That's got to be the real aim for us. But yeah, the way some of our fans are going on, I think there was a little bit of arrogance in some of the ways it was doing, a little bit disrespectful. I think people were looking, thinking, oh, we came down to the non-league last time. Well, we went up through the playoffs last time as well, by the way. We didn't win it. We had a really bad run last time. I think we had a run of 10 games last time when we came down this level, and we didn't win in that period. Now, I think people look for, it's easy. There's loads of part-time teams. There's only one. I think there's only one fully part-time team left in this division now, and there's two more I think who are hybrid, and that's it.
Yeah, I think it's once you get below National League, like these days, mate. Like you say, National League is a professional. It's the fifth tier. We all say that, don't we? Yeah. It's an extension of the EFL.
I still think when you look at it, the top 7, maybe 8 at a push, are a cut above everybody else in this division. Sure. Really, they're realistically going to. I think Halifax are a strange one because we beat them and we barely got out of second gear. We won 2-0 and we should have comfortably beat them, but we just didn't try any harder than we had to. And yet they're up there in the playoffs. They puzzle me a little bit. They do. I agree. I think our fans are a little bit over the top. I think we've got an element of fans online now who are very loud and very vociferous, who are convinced that because we've had this money put into the club, we should, steamroll every club team. Some of our fans are convinced we've got players on $7 or $8 a week. We haven't. I know for a fact from speaking to people at the club, we haven't. We've got a lot of players on decent wages now that we never used to, but we don't have players on that level. Whereas I know from speaking to others that by all accounts, York have 1 or 2 players who are on not far off that a week at their club. And that's really, I don't think some of our fans quite understood that York have got rich owners who've put a lot of money in as well. And they're 2 years into their cycle of development. We're not. You guys are on, riding on the crest of a wave of going up through the playoffs. So you've got that momentum behind you and you've improved on top of that. So the same with Boreham Wood and, Rochdale and Forest Green and Southend. So I think actually to come off the back of 2 seasons and find ourselves challenging for third, second spot and not being that far off top until recently, I think we've done all right. I don't think we've been exceptional. I think we've had an all right season, a decent season, not an exceptional one. And that's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. I know our fans don't want us to be down at this level any longer than we have to. And I'm sure you guys have had enough of being down in the non-league football for a while now. But yeah, there's just there is a level of entitlement in some of our fan base now as a result of this takeover, unfortunately.
Well, I've just pulled up my pre-season predictions to give you a bit of context. So I had Carlisle winning it. So I had Carlisle top, I had Rochdale in second and to go up via the playoffs. And I had Scunthorpe United all the way down in 14th place. So there you go. Bit off with my own prediction on the Iron. Now, you talked there about, a little bit of self-entitlement. I think that's all fans, right? So Scunthorpe United, no exception to that, myself included. But I look at social media, I look at TikTok recently, and there's this video circulating of a fan kind of engaging with players after Saturday's defeat. And the caption of it says, "That's the season over," which seems like pretty dramatic to me, considering, you could, like, playoffs are still way, way, way up for grabs and definitely in your control. Is that the mood on fans at the moment, or is that just, you lose a game and all hell breaks loose like it does at any club, right?
I think there's an element of that, and there's an element of the fan base being a little bit split at the moment. I think there's there's some fans who comment it's the end of the world if we don't finish top and we don't think we're going to really struggle with everything. I think people also look and think, well, if Rochdale win it, we're going to end up playing York in the playoffs, and they've got 8-0 aggregate win over us this season, so there's no chance we'll do it. It's like, well, I'm pretty sure they did the same over Oldham last season, and Oldham in the playoffs managed to get a result against them. For me, I look and I think, right, we've got these next 2 games against you and Forest Green. After that, the next time we play a team who's in the top 7 at the moment, I'm not sure. Southend is still outside the top 7, and they said it'd be Halifax. That's towards the end of March. After that, pretty much everybody else is outside the top 7, who are capable of beating all those teams easily. And I've run in, I think, in our last 7 games, we played 6 of the current bottom 7. So if we can hit a stride of form going into the playoffs, then there's a real opportunity there. But there is a real sort of negative feeling amongst a decent growing section, admittedly, of our fan base at the moment. But yeah, I mean, that video the weekend was ridiculous. Look, we went there with a game plan to frustrate Rochdale because truth is, if you go and attack Rochdale and you go really at them, they'll play it around you because they're a very good team. They're a very solid team at the back. They're a good team going forward. They'll just play through us as they did in the game at Brunton Park. With the players we had available, because Regan Linney was out injured and a few others, Hughes opted to go for almost like it when we were out of position. It was like a 4-2-4 with the two sitting very deep and the four. It was like almost like a midfield four. And everyone's seen the viral video of Rochdale passing it across the back. Well, they did that for most of the first half and barely threatened us. They barely managed to get anywhere near goal until they won a free kick on the right. A silly free kick would go away and they're whipping a great ball and they score. So it was working up till that point. Problem is we didn't have anything to change it, because we had to wait later till Clark was able to come on because he wasn't fit enough to play the full 45, I'd guess. So, yeah, I think fans are just frustrated because we had 2 years of dross and they come down this level and think, oh, well, we're going to walk it, so the football's going to be a lot better. We're surely going to batter teams and everything. And they look at the last time we were down when we were beating the likes of Farnborough 7-0, Leo Ramai 6-1, and Aldershot 5-0, all these ones at the same time. And we beat Braintree 5-0 at the start of the season. And I think people thought that's what's going to happen every week now. It hasn't worked out like that because it's not that kind of division. Not everyone's like York. York are very much the exception when you look at that. And I think that's probably not helped us much, actually, how York have done in the last couple of years. And we've got the money. They're thinking, oh, well, we can do exactly the same. It doesn't work like that.
Earlier on in this segment, you talked about Regan Linney, and he really did tear it up at the start of the season with 13 goals in 29 league games so far this season, having arrived from Altrincham in the summer. But, of course, he didn't feature on Saturday and has just 2 goals in his last 14 games after coming down, I think it was a virus, and is expected to also miss Tuesday's clash against the Iron. You've also got Georgie Kelly, who missed out with a thigh injury and is expected to be out for a couple of weeks. So your top 2 goal scorers sidelined. Next in, probably down the cab rank, is Luke Armstrong, who does have 8 goals so far this season, but it's fair to say he's only started 4 of the last 18 league games. Hugh Barker comes in on loan from Hull. There's a lot of movement going on at the minute in terms of your forward line. Are goals a worry? Because I'm looking at those 2 injuries and thinking it's a lot taken away.
I think... Well, the reports I've heard is that Linney probably should be okay for Tuesday night, is what I've heard. I mean, he apparently missed most of the training last week, so I'd imagine he'd be coming towards the end of that virus, fingers crossed. But I mean, yeah, Armstrong's having a good season, to be fair. But when he plays, he's playing really well, and he's. I think we're actually very blessed in that area that we've got some really good. We're basically looking at we're going to have probably for the first time in, I'd say probably 50, 60 years, maybe we're going to have 3 players finish with double figures in the league goals for a season. Because Armstrong's on 8, Kelly's on 9, and they'll both get a couple more at least, I think. So Armstrong's a different sort of player. He'll run all the channels. Kelly's a big, strong target man. There's a joke meme someone did of him chesting down the meteorite that killed the dinosaurs because that's how good he is at controlling the football. Linney will just run the channels, and obviously we haven't seen enough of Parker yet, but. Yeah, there's a slight concern with Kelly being out because he has been a big part of how we play at times in terms of as a target man. He gives us another option there. I'm not sure what Parker's like yet because obviously we only got 5 or so minutes of him at Rochdale. One bonus we do have as well is Charlie White coming back. Now, he's basically confirmed he's probably going to retire at the end of the season. He's come back after 16 months out with a broken ankle. Horrendous injury. He's had a really tough time of it. But he's come on and he looks all right, actually. He looks like he could be sharp over like a 5-10 minute period in games. He could give us a real strong option coming off the bench late on in matches. So that's an additional thing for us. And even David Ajiboye starting to find a little bit of form. He's suddenly starting to look like the player we hoped we would sign in the summer. It looked like he might have been on his way out in January because he barely played. I don't think goals are as much of a concern. I think the concern really is we're conceding too many soft goals at times. Really, defensively, we don't look sound enough. We're trying to find the right combination at the back. And I think as well in midfield, trying to find 2 holding midfielders that really suit each other has been a struggle. We've got Alex Gilliard playing there, formerly of your parish.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, I think he was probably a winger back when he was playing for you there. I don't
he
think
was a winger, yeah.
he hadn't converted to being a sort of central holding midfielder by then. But he's a good experienced head. But him and McAdam aren't quite as mobile as you'd maybe want in that area. So I don't think strikers is really a huge concern for us, to be honest, at the moment. I think there's a little concern with Kelly being out for a few weeks, but we don't know what Parker's like yet. So it's quite a hard one to judge, really, until we actually see him playing a little bit more than a few minutes at the end of a game when we're just launching the ball forward.
Let's cast our mind back to earlier on in the season. Carlisle, of course, beat 10-man Scunthorpe, and I think, was it Aaron Hayden who got the goal that day? Yeah. And I actually thought we played reasonably well in that game. Do you remember much of it?
Yeah, I remember it being a bit of a battle, to put it bluntly. As much as you were down to 10 men, you were probably lucky enough to be down to 9 men for.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, the elbow on Luamba was pretty horrendous, and I'm not sure how the lads got away with that one. But yeah, it was kind of one of those ones where we got the goal and we didn't really overexert ourselves from that point, and we sort of just. You guys threw everything at it because you at the end of the day, you had nothing to lose really from it. And we sort of just sat in the way we tend to play into Hughes lot and thought, well, we'll hit you on the break. We've got someone like Linney who can, he's very good on the counter. We probably should have wrapped it up. Stephen Wern had a brilliant chance to get a second later on, which he didn't take. But yeah, what I remember from it thinking is, we've beaten a pretty decent looking side there, in fairness, even though you're obviously down to 10 men. But yeah, that's the limit of my memories for that one, to be honest. It wasn't a classic game, really, was it, I suppose?
No, it left a lot to be desired. I think I watched that one. I think I was out of the country. I watched that one on DAZN, and it was a rough watch, mate. It was rough. Right then, we're on to the final bit. We look at our predictions, we look ahead, and we get our guests to tell us what they think the score will be. So, as we said earlier, third versus fourth. Top of the table clash. I'm still selling it as that. What do you think the score will be on Tuesday night?
I really can't change from the one I gave. We recorded our podcast yesterday, and I've got to stick with the same. I can't do something different, kind of. So it's going to sound like I'm very optimistic. If I'm going to go for 3-1, with a caveat that I think our third will come as a counter-attack goal later on when you're throwing men forward to try and get an equaliser. So yeah, 3-1 is what I'm going to go with for my score.
Well, really enjoyed those thoughts from Lee from the Brunton Bugle. Max, let's move straight on to our questions from the fans, and I'll kick off with this one from Fred Benson. I think it's an interesting one, and it's something we've probably not talked about actually before on the podcast. So Fred says, why do we always use the same routine when we kick off? We pass it back, then hopeful boot forward, and normally into touch. As all defenders move to that side to stop our attackers, there's often room on the other side if someone ran into space. Surely there are more options than the Route 1 approach.
I mean, yes, but also I think starting at high tempo is not an unreasonable option. Again, not to drag your pads in the pitch, but why risk a bobble? Pen them in when you can, and I think you are seeing signs to take that approach more often at the top level as well.
Ollie, I'm going to put this question to you. I know I asked you about Dec Howe earlier, but Martin Wilson says specifically, why have we let Dec Howe out on loan? Surely he's too great of an asset to the club. So I'm going to add to that. Do you think Dausch is an improvement on Howe?
That's a tough one. I don't think improvement would be the word. Obviously, we've only seen a very short amount of Dausch. Sure. He looks more comfortable to me playing off the left, which is where Howe was kind of operating. He's also a bigger lad. He looks slightly more comfortable to me up front on his own as well. Mm-hmm. I think I wouldn't say he's an improvement as such. I think he just suits the system that we're playing at the minute slightly more.
Right, I'm going to stick with you, Ollie, because there's a bit of an expansion on that question from Nick Bell, who says, do you think Dec Howe will play for us again? His loan is an initial month. Well, actually, is it? Because I think we should talk about that. There's conflating reports. Scunthorpe are saying a month. Altrincham are saying till the end of the season. But anyway, with his current deal expiring at the end of the season, do you think he will get another contract? I suppose if we're to have a successful promotion push, he would play a big part in that.
Yeah, I think on his interview, Butler said it was an initial month. Well, he kind of worded it, we can bring him back after 28 days, which might be till the end of the season, but we've got that kind of option to recover them.
Exactly. Yeah. That sounds like a standard loan till the end of the season to me. 20-day
Yeah.
recall, which all loans do.
In terms of seeing him again, I think, it would kind of depend on injury, or if we did change system, if we decided we wanted to play two up front, I think he'd be good for that. I think if we stick with the same system and players stay fit, it wouldn't surprise me if he maybe has played his last game for the club.
Interesting. Okay, Max, question from Andy Lehman. So the next 6 games takes us to the end of February, including the Carlisle game. Realistically, out of 18 points, how many do you think we can get? Andy's going for 12.
That's interesting. Does Andy say where he thinks he get the 12, or is he not that brave?
He's not that brave, but he does say, so I'm going for an optimistic 12 with draws against Carlisle, Rochdale and York. So that's 3, I don't know how the maths works out there, but so that's, 3 wins and 3 draws.
Yeah. Oh, well, in fairness, it does work then, because you win the other 3.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're basically going to have 6 games in 18 days. It's a really tough run. Away to Carlisle, home to Boston, away to Rochdale, away to Aldershot, home to York, home to Solihull. Look, there's 3 games there in particular. We could go away to Carlisle, away to Rochdale, and at home to York, play well in those games, and come away with 0 points. So, how many do I think we'll get? I will go for 1, 2. I will go for 10. I think we'll finally beat Boston. I think we'll beat Aldershot. I think we'll beat Solihull, and then get a point against one of the other 3. Maybe actually Carlisle tomorrow. To be honest, I just think you can see a little gap in the table now, can't you, between 2nd and 3rd?
Yeah.
Rochdale and York. I mean, our points per game record is excellent, but Rochdale and especially, but also York's is just ridiculous. So, it's going to be a massive, massive, massive 3 weeks.
Well, I've asked Ollie extensively about Dec Howe, so Max, I'll stick with you. So, first of all, Pete Story says, why do you think we've let Dec Howe go out the door? Seems strange to allow a 10-plus goal scorer to leave the building. But then, I wanted to put this to you. David Welton says, I'm confused why everyone is so upset about Howe going out. Unless we're playing with 2 up front, Howe does not work. I've said it numerous times, he does not add enough to the team to just hope it drops to him in the box and score. We have a team, all hard-working players. We can't carry Howe thinking he might get a chance.
So look, that's football, isn't it? You can have 5 football fans in the room and you get 6 opinions. I think the latter is a little bit harsh in terms of why Howe's been let out on loan. Obviously, Mason Campbell went out, but they stated that Dawson was available for loan. They'd obviously been sniffing around the striker a couple of times, a couple of previous targets. Look, you never know for sure what goes on behind closed doors. Dawson hasn't left, certainly yet. So, if they were trying to make the finances work, I do wonder about that. So,
Spell maybe hinting there that we couldn't find a suitor for Joey Dawson.
Well, I think if we'd already found a suitor, he'd have gone on the basis that the club publicly announced he was available for loan. I'm just putting 2 and 2 together on that front. I do think the different wording from the clubs does actually point and hint at something. However, the fact that Altrincham are saying it's till the end of the season, they're quite reasonably thinking this is a good signing. We're the bottom end of the mid-table, but we don't want to get sucked into a relegation battle. This is, if Howe goes there and scores 4 or 5 goals between now and the end of the season, that's, double thumbs up for them. Whereas from our perspective, we're thinking, look, we maybe want him to go on a good little run. We maybe need the finances to add up. However, if we pick up an injury or all of a sudden, if by the end of that month, let's say the next 6 games, we get to the end of that and you think, Jesus, actually, we might really be in the hunt here. or we have a little bit of a wobble, then suddenly you think, well, not really that bothered about what Altrincham are paying in terms of Howe's wages. We're better off with them in the building as a plan B. So, look, very, very interesting. These are tough decisions. So, yeah, let's hope it works out for everybody, including Howe.
Well said. Ollie, the next question comes from Richard Parkinson, and he says, why do you think Hurst keeps playing? So Richard hasn't been impressed with Hurst so far.
No, I think...
I think we know why he's playing. It's come from Donny Rovers at some point. So.
Yeah, true. He's taken a bit of time to get going. I've got to say, from what I've seen of him, I've not been overly impressed, but I think it might be a little bit harsh to say that quite this soon. He's had one sub appearance and then one game starting and then another game starting. So he's only really been here for 3 games. Still getting used to the players. Wouldn't surprise me if we saw Smith come in for him. Obviously, we know what he can do. He might just need a bit more time to bed in, but you never know. He does seem like a slightly different player to me. To Smith, he doesn't seem like one who's going to take on a man. He seems to sort of want to come inside, link up with the fullback, maybe a quick 1-2s, that kind of thing. So slightly different profile, but it would not surprise me at all to see Smith starting soon, now that he's in the building and got his fitness back a little bit.
Yeah, fair enough. Right, Max, move on to you. This question from Tim Bell. Grassroots Day, why don't the club sort out the closed Morts corner for away fans and offer discounted family-free grassroots tickets behind the goal? Appreciate that this would only work with away followings of 400 or less, but how many times in the last 3 seasons has there been more than that? This introduces new fans, young and old, helps those less affluent and creates a better atmosphere, plus add-ons with food, draw tickets, beer, retail purchases. And on that, Max, interesting to see the away end utilised in its full rather than just chucking them in the corner, because I know they had 400, but we could have still utilised the corner, but we seem to open it up this week. And I think that's the first time I've seen that all season.
I mean, it was just good to see a proper away support. And look, let's not beat about the bush here. Southampton are a proper club. Historically, that they are bigger than us. You know, you look at the crowds they've been getting this season, very consistently, sort of 8,000. And if it wasn't for West Ham, I think they'd get more than that. They really delivered a good racket as well, you know, over the course of the whole 90 minutes. In terms of the question, what else can you add? I think he hits the nail on the head completely there. I think back to sort of games back in the day where it worked quite well. So if that's something that the club think could work, that would be great. I'd imagine it'd have to track towards, you know, ticket sales being quite positive, you know, to make it financially worth a while to get the extra resources in and, you know, open up that stand and the policing and stewarding levels and all of that. But if it can work, I think that would be terrific.
Right, Max, the other Nick Bell says, also, should we be offering Cal Roberts a 3-year deal right now? Not sure I can handle another summer of will he, won't he?
Should we? Yes, that'd be terrific. Very, very few clubs at this level are offering players 3-year deals. If that happens shortly, I'm going to start. You know, which Scunthorpe fan has won the Euro Millions? That's what I'd want to know. Look, he's been absolutely terrific for us, not just this season, but last season as well, and you know, particularly in the last 6, 7, 8 weeks. You know, when we really needed him, he's really stepped up in key moments for us, and it's just great to see a player who's had pretty significant battles with injuries. He's had a great run this last 18 months, maybe the best injury run of his career. I'm still of the opinion that if he'd been this fit for the entirety of the Jimmy Dean season, we'd have got promoted that year. Yeah. Which speaks to his quality. Like that you know, that goes to show you how quality a player he is. And let's hope that come the end of the season, we're still thinking that having had Roberts fit for the full year has given us the best possible chance of having a really, really good year. Because let's face it, right now, we're having a really, really, really good year.
Right, this next question I have to stick with you, Max. for reasons you will understand at the end. So, Jack,
I'm worried now. What's the question?
Jack M's been in touch and says, "What game do you think will be crowned as champions? When will Butler's deal be done? As everyone thought we were just waiting for an announcement. Will Roberts sign an extension? But more importantly than all of that, what is in Max's teacup? Because I'm certain there's always nothing in it."
Hang on. Could I pivot the camera?
Yeah. It's empty. It's empty. You've just spilt tea. He's actually just spilt tea live on the podcast, guys. Thanks for that, Jack.
I've just spilled the last dregs of my. I'm usually a fizzy drink man. I'm not actually a big tea or coffee fiend, so it tends to be a bit fizzy pot. In terms of Jack question, look, we're still a long way adrift of Rochdale. I think realistically, in order for us to catch them, we'd have to beat them twice. We'd have to beat York as well, and then at that point you're going, congratulations, you're still 5 points adrift. Rochdale's points per game at the minute, I think we'd have them finishing on 115. Like that's comfortably more than Wrexham and Notts County got in that absolutely insane season.
Yeah.
So look, I'm not saying if we will or we won't, because let's face it, we won't. But that's the mountain we've got to scale if we want to. And then I got distracted slightly by the drinking question. What other great questions from Jack Mitchell have I missed there?
Well, the big one is Butler's.
Butler's deal. To be fair, that's a very good question. Actually,
it is, isn't it?
It sounded like it was imminent. Really, not sure what happened there. And then he's also asked about the Roberts extension, hasn't he? Mm. So look, I don't. You never know for sure in what direction both of those are going. You know, do the club want to know what division we're in first? Frankly, does Roberts want to know what division we're in first? Because you know the amount of quality performances he's put in for a side at the top end of the National League. I don't care who you are, you're going to attract suitors. Now he might not be interested in those suitors, but you're going to attract them. So I don't want to see another Scunthorpe United promotion push derailed by falling outs over contract extensions, because let's face it, that's happened before. I just hope that everybody's happy, and if anybody wants a contract extension, that those discussions are happening behind scenes where they should be.
Okay, I think that'll draw us to a close on the questions from the fans. There's a couple of others, but they kind of double up on things we've already talked about. So before we move on to our prediction segment, Ollie, a quick word from you on the article which we mentioned earlier on, which has been featured in the latest edition of the 442 magazine. So just talk to us about that article.
Yeah, so 442 every month run a monthly segment called Best and Worst, basically going through fan writers' best and worst aspects of supporting their club. So like best 11, worst 11, best player, cult hero, that kind of thing. They, luckily enough for me, reached out to me, asked if I'd like to write in this month's edition. Said they'd read my stuff for Iron Hour, liked it, and then reached out. Got right in that. A bit of help from you guys. I know a couple of ones I was stuck on, and then got that submitted, and that is available in this month's edition. You can buy that in stores somewhere. I struggled to find one, but I found one in Asda in the end. If not, there's digital copies you can get. You can order them online. If anyone's interested, you can basically any way you want to get them, you can. If you don't want to buy that, read my stuff instead.
Excellent. So you
we're not
got
behind a paywall.
You got it. You got it in Asda. That's useful to know.
Yeah.
I'm down. I'm down Wesley tomorrow, so I'll nip across Scotland Road and go into the big Asda. I expect to see a queue of Scunthorpe United fans, them flying off the shelves.
But as Ollie says, if you want to read his other content on the Iron Hour, it's not behind a paywall, because we are a podcast of the common man. So let's
and the common woman as well,
and the common woman, of course.
Before Becky and Eloise start, issuing angry messages to you.
Yeah. Well, I think our listenership can be described as a word beginning with C, but maybe anyway. Right, let's talk about. Oh no, it's just the host, isn't it? Right, let's talk about that game against Carlisle. So when I finished recording the Spine the Camp, Lee told me to let Iron fans know about the fan zone, which is effectively two big shipping containers behind the main stand, which you actually have to walk through to get to the away end. So he's told me that as long as you don't cause a ruckus, there'll be no problems with getting yourself in the fan zone. So it's definitely something to do if you're making your way up to Carlisle on Tuesday night. Then let's have a look at our predictions as sponsored by the Unity Group. So Max, I'll kick off with you first. How do you see this one going down?
It's been very tight. I know people didn't think that Carlisle played amazing when we played them, but I thought they did exactly what they needed to do, really. Almost a bit like we did against Southend. Hughes has been under a little bit of pressure there in terms of, I think their fans were hoping they'd really be in the mix for a title push. But there's a lot of quality signs at this level. So I see it being tight. I don't see there being lots of free-flowing and quality football, end to end from both sides per se. At least not for the whole 90 minutes. Both sides might have the stages. I'm going to go for 1-0 Carlisle again, I'm afraid.
Well, that was the longest scoreline prediction I've ever heard. Ollie, I'm hoping you're a little bit more succinct. Anyway, Ollie, scoreline prediction.
I can be very succinct if you want. I think I'll go 2-1 Iron. We've got a really good record against the teams around us, especially away as well. I think we're a good away side. I'll go Whitehall, and I think Ewins do a goal.
Nice. Okay, well, that draws to a close the prediction segment. Oh, I'll chuck mine in. I'll tell you what, I'm going to be brave and I'll go 0-0.
I get so much grief for that. And can I just say as well, obviously in the last podcast we had Eloise on. I think when I predicted 0-0, wasn't very happy. And then bet she thought we wouldn't notice pre-match on Iron Army's vlog, switched to what she said on the podcast, went from 2-2 to a scunny defeat.
Wow.
I keep my pessimism. I don't chicken out at the last minute.
Normally goes the other way, doesn't it? People normally get more optimistic on match day. Right, let's move on to the FPL update. Max, I hope you're ready and primed to go. And if not, I'll buy you some time and tell you that top of the league is Josh Wentworth at the moment with 1,505 points. But Max, as we look a little bit further down the table, what do we see?
We see what was a very tight week, to be fair. I think there was a lot of players had players in the Liverpool and Manchester City game. So if anybody had Dominic Szoboszlai playing for them, I can only apologise without getting into that mess. It's a very interesting one. Obviously, friend of the pod, Mike Hickson in fourth. Friend of mine, Ross Gibson in fifth. Friend of every Scunthorpe United fan, Tyler Denton in sixth. Sam Allen, we know very well, in eighth. As we say, this is a league with nearly 400. If you are in the top 200, you've done really, really well. And I know there's quite a lot of fans who sort of have their own league, so with their family and friends, and maybe they're doing really well in that, and then they get to the pod league and they're thinking, God, the competition's tough, isn't it? If we scroll right down to the bottom, perhaps unsurprisingly, Mike Jackson is still winning with his efforts of deliberately throwing the league. So then a big shout out to second bottom, who in my book is the true bottom, with Charlie Hodgkinson, who actually had quite a good week this week with 60 points. So hopefully he can avoid that wooden spoon come the end of the season. In terms of the pod, our little mini league, Barry, you're up to third.
I recovered.
You've gone above Marco. Good week for you with 68 points. Obviously, you'd captained Mbuemo for Manchester United, which I think was a strong move.
I didn't know. I captained Haaland.
Sorry, that's Marco, isn't it? Sorry, I do apologise. Yes. That's worked out well. Obviously, goals for Fernandez, clean sheet for Timber, goal for Calvert-Lewin. So a good week for you. Becky's still top of the tree. Then myself in second, you in third, Marco in fourth, and Gareth in fifth. Although Gareth did have a decent week, so he's closed the gap a little bit on Marco at least. So who knows? That could be a twist come next season if Gareth pulls it out of the bag.
I'd love it. Do you know what I was thinking about this? I'd actually love it to be Marco. I think that would be the one that I want the most.
Do you think? Yeah, it might not get as many views as Gareth, but I think for us, it would have the most comedy value.
Yeah. I thought it was you, but you're too Route One, and Gareth's too. Like everyone would love that. That's a bit.
Gareth would lean into it, and it'd be funny, and he'd enjoy it.
Yeah.
Whereas.
Marco would hate it.
Have a club ever had a mascot who, before the game, has had like 3 bottles of wine? I suspect the answer probably is no. So, yeah, Gareth, me and Barra are cheering for you to come forth.
We absolutely are. Right, just before we wrap up, I wondered if you could remind our listeners about the race night, which... Of course, once again, the INR podcast just remind our listeners the traumatic events really that Evie Moore and her family are going through at the moment. And we said it last week. I'll continue to say it. INR podcast, our listeners, all Scunthorpe United fans, all people of Scunthorpe, continue to stand with Evie and her family.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about it on the last pod, and I thought some very, very, very good words from you there, Barra. On Friday, the 6th of March, 2026, there will be a charity race night raising money for Sunflowers Action Group, which is a very, very worthy cause, helping families, not just theirs, but across the area with going through really, really, really tough times at home. It will be at Brumby Hall Social Club, which, for anybody who doesn't know, is sort of the big building next to Atfrod football pitch. On Ashby Road in Scunthorpe, and just for £10 you get pie and poos, race night and disco, which is absolutely terrific. And look, if you fancy yourself as a bit of a betting whiz, there's a chance for you to earn some of your money back there with the race night prizes. So that usually gets Marco. He likes to think he can win a bet. We're going, so hopefully we'll see some Iron fans there. As I say, Friday, 6th of March 2026, just £10 a ticket. Check out our socials for information for anybody who wants to come along or make a donation. It should be a great night, raising money for an even greater cause.
We'll be a running joke this every week. Have you told the person you're taking yet?
No. Have you?
No.
Excellent. I think there will come a time when we will have to. Knowing how forgetful me and you are, it will probably end up being. I'm thinking like the Wednesday that week.
I'm thinking the Friday.
Oh well. There's a.
I'm thinking getting in the car, engine on job. Just to let you know.
Well, if it all goes Pete on Barra, I'll go with you.
Thank you. Well, yeah, thanks, Ollie. Thank you, Max. Great for having you on as always. Ollie, thanks for joining us on this episode of the INR podcast. How have you found it? Shit.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you for having me on.
Loved having you on. Right, listeners, thanks for tuning in to the INR podcast. For those of you that are making the way up to Cumbria, we'll see you in Carlisle. For those of you that are not, we'll see you on Saturday. Either way,